What's going on, everybody? This is FSM College Football Live. We had a one-week hiatus last week, but the boss man, Blake Follis, is here ready to get your lineups set and secured for our college football top 25 action. He's rolling up his sleeves as if that's going to, make his picks that much better. What's up, boss man? How are you, buddy?
They're going to be better, and they're going to be fantastic.
They're going to be real and spectacular.
This is along the same lines.
Yes. So here's the thing. Before we get started, you've had a couple weeks now to get these picks together since you were traveling last week. But I'll put it up on the screen. For those that have not played Top 25 College Football DFS with us before, voila! Promo code CFB18 when you go and register on Fantasy Sports Markets gets you $5 on us, and you can use that to entering our $5 Whoa Nelly contest. How much is up for grabs this week, Bossman Blake?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot. I was going to count 5 for like
$100,000.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah,
it's Dr. Evil Medi.
If somebody hits the roster bonus, are we gonna be okay? We're gonna be able to survive?
No, we will hire free labor after that one.
All right, so we're gonna go out with a bang if one of you guys hits the roster bonus. So even more incentive to you. This could be your final week to play, knowing that all the money could be yours. But it is available for you guys over at FantasySportsMarkets.com with that promo code CFB18. All right, Blake, quarterback position. I think we always have to look at somebody like Kyler Murray, who once again is number 2 among FSM top projected quarterbacks this week. He's also been the number 2 overall scoring FSM fantasy quarterback in top 25 action, with just a lovely matchup at home against Kansas State. Other guys you can throw in, Trace McSorley. It was the first week, I think, in several games. I'm talking like 10, 20 games, that he did not have a passing touchdown last week on the road at Indiana, and has a chance to try and get back on it at home against Iowa. But where are you looking this week as far as possible top 25 action at the quarterback spot?
I love both of those guys, although Kyler Murray is my favorite, and I'm really actually looking at a full OU stack this weekend at home against K-State.
Makes sense. It'll be chalky, though.
It's very chalky. They're favored 24.5 right now. And it's one of those. It's also kind of a dangerous game too, because it could be, what we all fear with Bill Snyder, that he controls the clock and runs the ball, and things never work out the way that you want them to. But I think just because of the lack of the defense that they've got there, there were some sparks when they played Texas at home, but that was at home in Manhattan. I think OU still runs away with this one. But there's some other players, like right now I know that Derek King from Houston is atop the leaderboard for points this week.
Yeah, and that's a guy that's playing tonight. We should mention as well.
Is he playing tonight? Because I believe it says 3:30 tomorrow.
Oh,
tonight
you're right.
I'm
sorry. No, there's a couple different games on board tonight. You're right. South Florida, Houston, not one of them.
Correct. Now with that one, South Florida, Charlie Strong, the new Fighting Bulls. I think one of the dangerous things about that is they will employ the Bill Snyder strategy of controlling the clock. They like to play tight games, but that also leads you into a little bit of a dark horse pick by going with Blake Barnett, because Houston doesn't really have a passing defense. So it could be a nice contentious game of a shootout, but I personally would fade that game if it were me. The two games I'm really hunting down on, again, K-State and OU, and I like Utah and UCLA, which is tonight, and I would go ahead and roster up Tyler Huntley, just because I really like that one. The other couple quarterbacks outside, you'd mentioned Trace McSorley. I like Gardner Minshew with Washington State at Stanford. The guy's a prototypical Mike Leach quarterback, throws as many passes as he possibly can when they have the ball. And then the other character I like is Justin Herbert with Oregon at Arizona. They're a 9.5-point favorite on the road, but that one's an intriguing matchup to go ahead and start getting your feel-good Oregon game for the year.
De'Ara King is really interesting in loading up his game log and his profile over at FantasySportsMarkets.com. He's been very good, and then he's missed in sort of the next week. He's been great one week. It's the heart rate flowchart, the boop, boop, boop. And
So I'll avoid the roller coaster.
Last week against Navy, he was awesome. He was 25 of 38, threw for over 413 yards, 3 touchdowns, also ran 7 times for 56 yards for a total of 40.12 fantasy sports markets points. But the week before that against East Carolina, had a couple touchdowns, but only had 22 points on FSM. So even though he's the top fantasy football points per game scorer this week at the quarterback position, I think you're right, especially with a tough matchup against South Florida. Now, they are favored at home, even though they're unranked. And so I think people, that might lead them there. But I think with Murray on the table, Minshew, I don't love McSorley either. I'm probably talking myself out of him because Iowa's defense has been really good this year.
Yeah, but they're playing at Penn State. Penn State typically plays a hell of a lot better than they do anywhere else. I mean, that's the home field advantage. Yeah, well, that was still a pretty good game. It was just a late game rally by Ohio State. But even still, Trace McSorley had a great game that night, and it just didn't end up falling in his favor there. I mean, he had 36, shy of 37 points on FSM that night, but he had a rough game against Michigan State. Again, like you had mentioned, he didn't have a passing touchdown last week with Indiana, but he still had 107 yards on the ground, which gives you the go-ahead to say, yeah, I like that guy. What scares me is it's only a 6-point game. It is against Iowa. I was pretty good as far as keeping games close.
Yeah.
That's why, again, my two go-tos are Kyler Murray and Tyler Huntley. My dark horses, though, again, I had mentioned Blake Barnett with South Florida, whichever Florida down there. There's so many.
I think both work.
Yes. The other two that I like actually are Clayton Thorson with Northwestern. I think he's got an interesting matchup with Wisconsin. I'm not really convinced that Wisconsin has a stellar pass defense. And if you have a guy who's going to throw the ball, it's going to test him out quite a bit. And the other character of trade is Drew Lock with Mizzou, playing Kentucky. I like Kentucky's defense, but Drew Lock is still Drew Lock. And if he has Emmanuel, what is his last name? The wide receiver that may be out. Emmanuel Hall. It's unclear if he's going to come back. He just lost his dad last week, or they had a funeral for him. He has coming off an injury. He's with the team this week, but we don't know if he's going to play. So if he decides that he's a go, he wants to play, I expect him to have a blow-up game, which leads to a lot of points for Drew Lock. But at this point, as of right now on Friday at 5 o'clock, it's unclear.
Running backs? Okay. Anybody else that we've missed before moving on to running backs?
No. Let's run to running backs.
Okay.
Let's go.
You have Clemson with Travis Etienne on the road at Florida State. I know that's probably a guy that you're going to be on. Interestingly enough, Jeremy Larkin and Jonathan Taylor face off against each other. You have Northwestern's running back and Wisconsin's running back. One of those I absolutely prefer in this game versus the other. And then you talked about Kentucky, Missouri, Benny Snell. He's probable for this game. I'm looking at the injury report for him right now. He's got a foot injury, but people do expect him to play. And then you talked about Washington State. James Williams certainly in play, even though it's on the road. Alex Barnes with Kansas State has put up some good numbers. So where are you going this week? I think Etienne probably is that clear free space play. And I know for sure, and I'll let you go first, but when it comes to deciding between Jeremy Larkin at home or Jonathan Taylor on the road in Northwestern Wisconsin, I know who I'm going with, but I'm curious who you might be going with.
If I had to pick between the two, I'm probably going to go with Jonathan Taylor, just because I like the Wisconsin front line.
That's the right play, especially with Northwestern as inconsistent as they are, and you know that the volume and the opportunities are going with Taylor week in and week out. When you're making daily lineups, especially at the running back spot, you want to make sure you have consistency and volume at the running back spot, and you know Taylor's going to get it every week, even if the production may not always be there.
If I was going to make the consistency argument and going for a second QB, I would actually go with Syracuse's QB, just kind of floating back on to Eric Dungey. He's consistently at about 20 points a game. But going into the running back square, I'm really floating into kind of a Utah stack a little bit because I love Zach Moss. I think he's got a great matchup tonight with UCLA.
Wait, can I interrupt you for a second? There's a reason that Jeremy Larkin should not be a part of the conversation. He retired. He's no longer playing football.
See you, Jeremy. Have a
I'm trying to
good
wonder
day.
what happened to Jeremy Larkin.
Good luck to you, whoever the backup is for Jeremy Larkin. If you're in a pinch, go with him.
Yeah. According to Jeff Poitras, at JPO1961, Northwestern's top 4 runners since Jeremy Larkin left and quit football have combined for only 99 carries for 266 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor has 170 carries for 1,109 yards and 8 touchdowns. Don't play Jeremy Larkin this week.
No, that is your warning. Disclaimer has been made. All of those who like to play the game, watch the pod. Maybe that'll be our 90-second window for this show.
Right.
So, okay, going back to it. Love Clemson at Florida State. It's a good running back matchup for Travis. Love me some Zach Moss, Utah at UCLA. That is my absolute favorite. And if you're really looking for a solid contrarian play that nobody's going to be playing right now, just because they haven't really had enough of the feel-good moment, Kennedy Brooks, OU's running back. He's backing up Trey Sermon, and he's now elevated because Sermon is likely going to be sitting on the bench, even if he's a go. They've said that Kennedy Brooks is going to go ahead and get the start just because of his performance last week against TCU. A couple weeks before that, he had a really good output against Baylor, and that was in garbage time. We love the garbage time, but he did it in real time last week. So that's why I would go with Kennedy Brooks as my possible top flex candidate on that one. Other characters to go with, Miles Sanders. So if you want to go against Iowa, go ahead. It's a good matchup for you if you like it. And then I'm going to go out on the branch and pull my boy Justice Hill back in with Oklahoma State. The only reason I'm really going with him is it's homecoming for Oklahoma State, and they are honoring the legend Barry Sanders. So if you're ever a running back and you have the full opportunity to play in front of a legend and just go off, it's a pretty good weekend to do it this weekend.
That's an interesting narrative that I hadn't considered, the Barry Sanders return home narrative. I like that. Did you, and apologize if you said this already, did you mention Benny Snell as the candidate this week?
I did not, because I think Missouri is going to be a tough enough matchup at home with Kentucky.
Because they've been bad against the run this year.
They have, but
bad
if that's the only,
a lot of offenses this year.
But that's if the only person that you have to look out for is Benny Snell. It's not that bad of a deal to just go ahead and stack against the run, make him beat you through the air. And I feel confident enough that I don't know. I don't trust Mark Stoops. Anybody with the last name Stoops, I'm not yet trusting as far as coaching capabilities. They've had some great output. They've had some consistencies, but this one I'd bet on another year, just not this week. If you want to go with Benny Snell, it's a good, sexy pick. Rock your socks off. I've got 2 dark horses for you to consider. Alex Barnes with K-State. You know he's going to get some workload. It's a Bill Snyder game. It's going to be that strategy offense to just run the ball, and he's had some really good success.
Awesome in his last 2 games. 47.2 fantasy sports markets points against Baylor, 50 points against Oklahoma State. So he's certainly in the running to put himself back in top consideration.
The problem with that analysis, it's Baylor, Oklahoma State. Not exactly the top tier defenses.
But numbers are numbers, bruh.
Numbers are numbers. Just throwing the caveat. OU with what's my name? My Ruffin McNeil is the new defensive coordinator who replaced Mike Stoops. That's going to be the guy, and he did some success last week against TCU. No touchdowns on the rushing end, and I think all of their running backs that they had were only capped out at like 30-something yards. So I think the rushing defense, is there. So if they do beat them, it's through the air, in which case you want to look at going with my man Isaiah Zuber as a possible wide receiver pick. I like Alex. I'm just not sold on him yet. The other character running back to put in is Reggie Gillespie, I think is his name, with North Carolina State. That is a fantastic pick if you want to go on a little bit of a contrarian play. I think he's got a good matchup.
For sure, Gillespie will be.
Right.
Let's move on to wide receivers. You talked about Emmanuel Hall, currently doubtful to play in the game against Kentucky. He's missed 3 games so far. You love Hollywood Brown. You already talked about him, but a couple other guys that are intriguing plays as well. I think you mentioned Tywan Wallace a little bit earlier in the show, but you could also do that full stack. Oh, you didn't?
I didn't.
Did you mention a Wallace?
I mentioned Justice Hill, but not Wallace.
All right. Well, I got a lot of Cowboys confused. And the guy that you've been on throughout the season is Arcega Whiteside. with Stanford. I assume that he will certainly be in the conversation as well this week. So who do you like?
I love 2 games this week with K-State OU and Wazoo and Stanford. As far as the wide receivers to go pick from, I think that's going to be a throw it through the air game. Again, I mentioned Isaiah Zuber as a pick to go with because I think OU's defense is going to be so rushing focused on Alex Barnes. It would be a good pick to play. Hollywood Brown is a must roster. CeeDee Lamb has actually risen to top consideration, and it would be a good OU stack if you went that full roster there. In pulling him in, they've got a number of different weapons, but those were really ones, Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb, that are really consistent right now. Forgive me, I think it's Devontavian Martin with Washington State.
Devontavian Martin.
Yes,
Martin, yeah.
He's somebody for full consideration as the top receiver there with Wazoo. I think it's just a go-to guy. If you're going to go with Gardner, you got to go with Martin on that one. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is definitely the character on Stanford's team to roster. I'm just not comfortable with Bryce Love enough to go in that direction anymore. He's either hurt or something else is going on with him. And Marquez Stevenson with Houston is another pick to consider against South Florida. Again, it's all dependent. I think if they're going to go through the air and make some quick points through Houston, it's going to be through him on that one.
Yeah, but if you're going to play Stevenson, you got to pair him with King, right?
Yes and no. I think you can still make some points without going with King on that one.
Okay.
King's going to throw the ball, but he may diversify it out a little bit. I just think Stevenson's going to be the safest play on that Houston game. Two dark horses.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the 2 dark horses I have: Dylan Mitchell with Oregon and Randall St.
Herbert too.
Right, and if you're wanting to pick that game with South Florida and Houston, Randall St. Felix has got some dark horse contention numbers that you would likely respect, just because Houston gives up a lot of passing yards. So pairing him with Blake Barnett would not be a less than shrewd move.
There you go. All right, so we've gone through quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. It's now time for our favorite dart throws of the week at tight end. But there have been a couple strong plays. You have Albert O with Mizzou, Sternberger with Texas A&M. Fant has been getting a lot of action with Iowa. Caleb Wilson, Jake Ferguson with Wisconsin. No, you don't have to worry about my guy Irv this week. Irv Smith with University of Alabama.
Tua and Irv are off. Tui, Judy, and Irv are down.
So you've mentioned your love for UCLA. Do you think Caleb Wilson is going to be in consideration this week?
I love Utah more than I love UCLA, but because Utah is playing as well as they are right now, I think I would go ahead and fade Caleb Wilson.
Okay.
Although he may be the only offensive piece that they go with. I really enjoy looking at Mitchell Wilcox, aside from the characters that you mentioned above. I'd stay off of TJ Hawkinson. It's not really somebody, but the actual one that I would probably look to go with is Trey McKitty with Florida State. That is a play. Right now it looks like he's on the downslide, but I think he's getting ready to hit a good uptick just because Florida State's more than likely going to be playing from behind.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I think it's a good matchup for him to at least get out in space and make some points happen. That's really, you've already mentioned Elise Mack would be maybe a guy that I'd go with playing Navy. Navy always plays Notre Dame extremely hard no matter where they're at or what they're doing. And that'll be the talk of the town with Lee Corso tomorrow. So that's where my heart lies this week. I wish you all the best. And I'm not even going to give you any opportunity to talk about tight ends just because your man Irv Smith is off.
Yeah,
so
that's my guy. It was like when I used to be on 610, I would just tell people in the sack game for the Chiefs, just take D Ford every week. And for 10 weeks, I won every week. But then D Ford did what he always did and got hurt and left the scene, and we don't know what he's doing now.
Well, now he's probably watching football on Saturday mornings with Northwestern's retired running back.
There you go. Indeed. Remember the promo code CFB18. It's $5 on us when you go and play in our top 25 college football action at fantasysportsmarkets.com. The early slate will lock just before 11 a.m. Central Time, so make sure you guys get your lineups in.
Also tonight, don't forget about the Utah-UCLA game.
Very good. That's a big part of it as well. I will be back here Sunday morning at 10 a.m. East Coast time, 9 a.m. Central time with my guy Justin Fensterman. We will break down the Week 8 slate in the National Football League. We will answer all of your lineup questions as well. It's the most interactive fantasy football show that exists currently on the World Wide Web and all the digital media streams available to you. For Boss Man, I'm Ben. Thank you guys for watching. Good.
Give me one NFL piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to know who should I play. Kerryon Johnson, Chubb, and I think I actually picked up Mac and Chris Carson. Those are the four I got to pick. I
love that you want this on the air live with our audience all over
the world. Spot.
Okay, so Chubb, I don't like the matchup particularly for him. I think he'll still get decent volume. And then it's Kerryon Johnson and Marlon Mack.
Mack and Chris Carson, Seattle, playing at Detroit.
So, if you guys go and subscribe to the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast, you'll hear myself and Elliot Crest of the Quan Edge break down everything game by game. We go rapid fire. He actually really likes Chris Carson as a tournament play this week, but I believe that the best play, based on volume, based on the fact that Detroit is starting to go a little bit more run heavy, based on him setting career highs last week in the running game, I think for now your best bet in this spot is Kerryon Johnson.
What about LeGarrette Blount vulturing my TDs?
Well, he didn't last week.
Well, that was last week. New ball game.
I know, but it's at home. It's against Seattle. You can score on them in a variety of ways. I expect Kerryon Johnson to be the best play of all of them. Chubb might get more volume, but I don't necessarily think he'll do the most with it. I think Kerryon Johnson will.
I'm playing Connor on the other side, so I think I'm pretty safe on that game. Galladay or Boyd?
Oh, man. Oh, they're both so good. I would go Tyler Boyd. Again, a stat that Elliot mentioned on the podcast. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense is worst in the league at giving up fantasy points to wide receiver ones, wide receiver twos. I don't know if they're still as bad against wide receiver threes, but in theory, any wide receiver that you play against Tampa Bay should go out and have just a bang-up game. So I like Tyler Boyd this week.
If that's the case, do I go Diggs or Galladay?
Oh, good Lord. I mean, Diggs has had success against the Saints at home before in the past.
Like last year.
Although nice little revenge narrative there. I think I would still go with Diggs because he's getting more volume than Galladay, but Galladay's just in such a good spot, and he's so good. For now, I go Diggs, but hit me up Sunday morning on FSM Football Sunday live right here on YouTube Live, on Periscope, and on Facebook Live. And you get your damn questions asked.
Yes.
Fine, yeah, pair us up against each other. Try and tear the union apart. All right, let's get out of here. He's Blake. I'm Ben. We'll see you guys on Sunday. Be good.